All right. Welcome back to another episode of Side Note, the podcast dedicated to underground electronic dance music and all things related. I am your host, Nick. And true to our description today, it is my pleasure to bring you the visionary artist, Sawyer Hurwitz, aka Psychotronic Solutions. Welcome, sir.
How's it going?
Dude, thank you so much for coming over.
Yeah, really happy to be here. This is a fun setup that you got here.
Thank you. And I guess for the folks out there, I met you 3 years ago-ish at the Wisdom where you were displaying some of your art. Folks, you need to check out his art. We'll link you, and we'll link you in the description and at the end here. But Sawyer's stuff is just amazing, kind of like visionary, psychedelic stuff. And I remember I happened to be under the influence, maybe, of psychedelics at the Wisdom, and I saw the display, and you weren't there, I don't think, or you were kind of, socializing elsewhere, and there was someone else, and I was like, who made this? Who made this? I must know. And there was a particular light box, and maybe we'll link it in the description as well, through my IG. But it blew my mind, and I remember getting in contact with you, and I was like, name your price, because I must have this. And yeah, it's amazing. You're just so talented, dude. So really, really stoked to have you here and have you talk about your process and anything else.
Well, thank you. I'm blushing.
So I guess to start, I when guests come on, I usually ask them what have they had going recently. For the DJs, they're like, oh, I had a gig this weekend, X, Y, and Z. It sounds like you've been up to some really interesting shit.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a wild couple of years for everybody. My big adjustments to it have been, right now I'm getting back into festivals after, the long hiatus that we all had, which is great. I'm also, doing a lot of film work, which I'm under NDA, so I can't really talk about.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, but that's been a lot of fun. I just got back from a month in New York shooting someone, a very famous magician. And also this last year or so, I've been really getting into the NFT world, which is its own weird trip.
Oh yeah. So I noticed, I saw on your gram that you posted some stuff, some NFTs. So how has that been working out for you, and kind of what what platform did you choose? Give us the beats.
You're catching me at a weird moment with it where I'm feeling particularly disillusioned.
Okay.
I've been very involved in the scene for a while, particularly in the Tezos community, which is it's a blockchain. It is a proof of stake blockchain, so it's one that is 2 billion times more energy efficient than Ethereum. So I came at it from a very environmental, perspective that was like, oh, well, I want to get involved in this digital ownership thing because it, for me as an artist, provides a lot of opportunities and a lot of new ways to explore my art as a new medium, which I think is something that's neglected in a lot of the conversations around NFTs. But I got into that. I made some good money with it. It's been great. But so much of the NFT community, at least what I'm experiencing at this moment, is very oriented around collectibles, or what's called collectibles, which in my opinion are just sort of in some ways they are collectibles, kind of like monies were, but in a lot of other ways, they're just a new version of shitcoins.
Right. It's just speculation rather than people who have interest in the art. You mean
the value about it is all hype.
Right.
It's not whether or not the art is good. It's not whether or not it's something that you'll want to keep. It's just whether or not enough people will think it's cool.
Right.
And I hate that because, when you have a culture that is oriented around thinking about what's cool, you get kind of the worst kinds of people. And it's not to say a lot of the artists in that community are great. I've met a lot of awesome collectors. I like that community in a lot of ways, but there's also so much of it that's oriented around popularity and the way that you see the worst high school dramas play out. You know what I mean? I was just at NFT NYC, which is
a conference.
It's a big conference. I only went to a couple of events there because I was working at the time, and I was invited to one party by a friend that I know through Clubhouse. And in front of the party, it was a party for his, he was releasing a project, and then also it was being paired with this other collectible project called Cool Cats. And outside the front door, I asked the guy who was bouncing. I was like, hey, it's my friend saying, can I get in? And he said, "Are you here for the Cool Cats party?" And I said, "I don't really know much about Cool Cats." And the person that was at the front of the party said to me in this voice, "Ugh, you don't know about Cool Cats? Do you even NFT?" And I wanted to just like,
Wow.
I wanted to leave just then and there. It was so gross. And the thing is, that is a huge part of that community, and it's disheartening because I feel like, you know, there's so many potentials to be realized for art, especially for digital artists, that are kind of being overlooked in the wake of collectibles.
Yeah, it's sort of like the new version of the hype beast culture, right? It's like people who would have been waiting in line for the shoe drop are waiting to get in the Cool Cats party.
The person who hosted the party goes by NFT hype beast.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm a huge crypto guy, and you know, I've mentioned it on this show before, where I could have a whole other show, you know, talking about crypto. But yeah, NFTs are one aspect of the space where I don't dislike it. I haven't taken the time to fully understand it. And from what I understand, yeah, it's very just kind of hype driven. You know, I got burned. I actually bought one NFT because I thought it was cool, but I didn't. Because I thought it was cool personally, but I didn't invest in sort of understanding that it's not really about what I think is cool in terms of like sound investment.
Well, if you're trying to, invest, if you're trying to own art, then that's the right mentality.
Right.
And the thing is, what a lot of people forget about, you know, art as an investment is it ages like wine. Whereas the NFT community treats it very differently. Yeah,
that's true. I mean, it's pure speculation, right? It's what can I flip it for? I mean, and that's everything in the economy right now. Like people are trying to flip houses, people are trying to flip NFTs, people are trying to flip their stocks, people are trying to like make a quick buck on shit coins. It's just sort of where we are now, which is like strange. But okay, so you were in New York doing some cool stuff, and then I think you had mentioned to me that you did some stuff at Dirtybird Campout, right?
Yeah. Although this time I took off the artist hat for that to help out with a friend's installation. This thing called Frick Frack Blackjack. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
Oh, it's awesome, dude. If you ever get the chance, Frick Frack Blackjack, coolest fucking thing. It's my homie Marv that runs it. It's a blackjack table where you can bet anything but money.
Okay.
So you can go there, and mostly we have just a collection of just weird shit. Just the strangest like oddities and this and that. And you come there with the weird shit that you find and bring at festivals, and you bet that against other weird shit. But you can also bet experiences. Somebody actually bet a date with me and won it. So I actually went on a date.
Oh, nice.
Which was pretty fun.
It's cool. Okay. And then so like in terms of, are people aware of this beforehand? So they're like bringing stuff in advance?
It's gotten to that point.
Okay.
You know, this started, Marv used to take this to Burning Man as just a briefcase with some like toys, and he would bet people's like Burning Man gifts, you know?
Okay.
And it's just evolved to the point that he's doing a festival every weekend across all of the US. So he's very busy. He's been doing some festivals now for like 5 years, you know. It's gotten to a point that a lot of people come expecting that. And as a result, people bring the weirdest shit.
Got it.
Like my favorite thing I've ever brought, knowing that Marv would be at an event, was an inflatable fuck sheep. Like you ever see those inflatable sex dolls? It's like that, but a sheep.
I didn't know such a thing existed, but not
such
surprised.
a thing shouldn't exist. But you know, Woolia Roberts is a prized possession, and therefore went for a high bid. Yeah.
Wait, so you brought that to stake?
Yes.
Okay.
And I lost it.
Did someone end up winning it from you? Okay.
I lost it. I was trying to win 3 shake weights in an ornate box, which I feel like is a pretty good bet. I lost it, but then a year later, I was at Burning Man. I went and found him. When they're at Burning Man, he just like lets his cart travel playa, and sometimes you'll just be biking in deep playa and you'll suddenly bump into a blackjack table, which is a really fun way to experience it.
Yes.
And I found it, and the one night I went there, just coincidentally, the moment I sat down, somebody sat down next to me and busted out my inflatable fuck sheep, which she won in Florida after I lost it in California. It traveled the country,
its way back to you,
and then made its way back to me
at the playa,
and I won it.
Wow!
So I have Woolia Roberts again.
She's back.
She's back. Yes.
Well, you know what they say. You know, if you love something, let it go.
Right.
It was meant to be.
Yeah. Although let's just be straight on the record. I didn't love this fuck sheep. Just appreciated.
To be clear.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and it sounds, so you were part of kind of this installation at the campout.
Yeah.
So, I haven't been, obviously Dirtybird, like very influential label and crew in dance music. So what is the overall vibe there? Is it kind of Burner-esque or like hints of that? Because I know there's like stand-up
I'm not the
comedy
person to
and
ask
stuff.
for that because
Okay.
I'm snooty about my festivals, and I a lot of people go to music festivals for music, and I'm not that person.
Okay, fair.
There was a point in time where I did, but now I've been to enough, and I've seen enough artists and been to enough shows where I'm like, oh, I've got to check this thing out, and I feel like I've done that. Mostly now I just kind of go for vibe. And I'm kind of chasing an energy, chasing like, a feel. And I thought Dirtybird has a lot going for it. I really love the camp activities. Claude is super involved in just like hanging out and having fun. He actually lost at our thing this year. He almost lost. He did keep it a platinum Wu-Tang record, but he did lose a sailboat at our table this year, which is pretty crazy. Wow. He's very into Frick Frack. But so it was a good time, and a lot of the people involved are great. But I feel like it is a little bit lacking in experiences, and that there's not that much live art, and there's no real lounges. There's nowhere to like chill.
Okay.
Mostly it's like there's a few places to like party, and during the day you play games, and that's awesome. But I feel like it could be more, and it wouldn't take that much more to push it to that level where it's a full-throated experience.
Got it. So I guess outside of Burning Man, which we can kind of get to, what would you hold up as
My number one?
Yeah.
Oh, easy. Lucidity.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. It's in Santa Barbara. It is very family oriented. And what I mean by that is not only do they have like people's families there are kids involved, but like the people that put it on are a big family. And it's a lot of amazing artists. And it's really, the big focus of Lucidity is transformation. So in personal growth. So they have a lot of amazing musical acts, not even necessarily entirely electronic, but largely electronic. They've got like 4 or 5 stages, all kinds of things like that, as well as a bunch of different experiences, including a university where they host workshops around the clock that are about all kinds of amazing things, including my personal favorite group there, the Art Temple, who have been very influential in my exploration of visionary art.
Does that have to do with Alex Gray, or is that?
No, not at all, actually. Yeah, it's run by, a bunch of different people, most notably Dave Zabowski, who is a former, Disney, like, I can't remember what exactly his position was there.
Or something?
Something or other, yeah. This guy, Tony Cole, Raw Honesty. There's a few people that put it together, they just host all these amazing workshops. They get a bunch of different really great artists to come and give talks. And I've learned a lot there. But they also do other kinds of workshops in the Lucid University, like about, sex and relationships, about spirituality, about politics, like about, there was this one I took like the last year I was there, like decolonizing your mind, stuff like that. And they're all really phenomenal, and it's a really cool place. So I highly, highly recommend.
Got it. So I get what you're saying in terms of like experiential. It's kind of the full gamut. It's not just a party. It's sort of
it's got everything. There's
transformational festival, I guess.
The first time I went to a Lucidity, I went knowing a single person. I left having like 30 friends, all these intimate experiences. And there's a lot of art installations and interactive things like Burning Man that are meant to facilitate that intimacy with strangers, including, I remember my first year, there was a experience. You spin a wheel and it instructs you to find a total stranger in a crowd, make eye contact with them, and feel out a vibe and go through this experience. And it facilitated a moment where a person that was a total stranger to me broke down in tears and cried in my arms, and we made a strong connection.
Oh, that's super cool.
And that's special, and that's magical, and I don't think you would find that at a lot of festivals.
Yeah, man. So that's definitely been one that I've heard of and has been on my radar. But to be honest, I've never, outside of Burning Man, I've never been to sort of, I don't know what you would term like the psychedelic music festivals. And yeah, I've always wanted to do that. So you've just sold me. So, it's a done deal. We'll figure it out for 22. And I guess, on a related note, right? It sounds like you're a burner. You've been, how many times have you been?
3.
Okay. So I've been once. I think when we met, I hadn't been yet. And then I've been to the last real one. So 2019 was my first one. But yeah, on that, and I don't know, the extent to which you'd like to discuss, but I know that I had seen some stuff on your feed related to like kind of camp drama. I don't know if that's something that you want to unpack at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into it too much because I don't want to like reopen the wound. But you know, Burning Man. When people ask me to describe Burning Man, I think the word I used, if I could sum it in one word, is intense. Right?
Yeah.
It's also intense. But the
Funny.
it's yeah. It is. It's an experience that's meant to sort of push you to your limits, and you know, in 2019, I was a camp lead for a camp that is a 100-person camp, pretty sizable. And the person that was the camp lead ended up in involuntary care for a large period of pre-burn. And I kind of had to like, you know, take the reins a little bit and help like get the camp across the finish line. And it was a very trying process, especially because, you know, Burning Man, yeah, I'm trying to say this in a way that's like delicate.
Sure.
I really don't want to like, you know, relive it too much. But,
Of course.
you know, the festival community, the Burning Man community is phenomenal. Some of the most amazing, intelligent, beautiful, wonderful people I've met in my life. But, you know, it's also problematic in a lot of ways, in that there are a lot of things that come up when you have a community that's so built around sort of open-minded spiritual experiences that, you know, I think unchecked can lead to a lot of issues. And I think in the last couple of years, we've really seen what that can be.
Right.
And I tried to sort of position myself as someone who was trying to, you know, sound the whistle on that a little bit that year in a very minimalistic way. I was trying to host I mean, and this isn't what caused the drama, for the record, actually. But this is related to it. I was trying to host a workshop about reconciling skepticism and mysticism. You know, without naming names or anything like that, I got in trouble with some people who believed aliens were in communication with them, who were under the impression that encouraging skepticism in the Burning Man community would impair the mission of the aliens in terms of, you know, moving our dimension to a greater place of unity and understanding, which I think is total hogwash. And it's not to say that, like, you know, unity and understanding aren't a great goal and all that, or even that these aliens aren't real. I have no idea if they're real.
Right.
But the thing is, like, you know, I think that that's a fundamental misunderstanding of where I was coming from and what my intentions were. And I think anyone who sees any form of skepticism as a danger is, you know, maybe not in a healthy mindset.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it before we started rolling, but, you know, the LA Times did a big article about this phenomenon in kind of the wellness and kind of hippie community, for lack of a better term. You know, they called it the woo-anon phenomenon, which is, yeah, once you've had one of these sort of, you know, eye-opening experiences, whether it's through psychedelics or meditation or otherwise, you know, it sort of shifts your perception of what the nature of reality is. And then I think from there, it's very easy to lose your skepticism for all other things, right? Because it's like, oh, if this thing that if the nature of reality is not what I thought it was, then what else is not what I thought it was?
I mean, yeah, it's like the gateway drug of, you know, questioning your reality, which I don't even think necessarily is a bad thing. I think there's so much that we take for granted that is dogma that is not necessarily true, you know? And it's really important that we do question even fundamental aspects of our reality. But it's important also to sort of stay grounded in what we do and do not know.
100%.
So, you know, a big thing I'm an advocate for is as much as possible to avoid belief. I think believing is when you know, accept something in absence of fact. And, you know, I think believing is a core part of what it means to be a human also. I think it's something that we do naturally, but I think it's something that we also have to have and hold awareness of.
Right.
And when it comes to, you know, engaging in, you know, spiritual, metaphysical, whatever practices, you know, I think that the danger of the other side, of the adverse of that, is that if you're too skeptic brained, you kind of deny yourself the ability to believe and therefore experience these things. Because in a lot of ways, we also construct our reality through that, especially when we're dealing with spiritual or metaphysical experiences. So what I'm a big advocate for is, you know, abstaining from total belief, but doing a practice, which is a term I'm actually borrowing from Lacanian psychoanalysis and a lot of film theory, interestingly enough, which is the suspension of disbelief. When you go into a movie, you can empathize with the character and you know that what you're seeing is not real.
Right.
However, you suspend your disbelief if it's a convincing film, and you can engage with it in a way that you can empathize and therefore experience a psychological and emotional catharsis from the process. And you can do the same for spiritual experiences. Is you don't have to say, yes, this is true, but you have to say, for now, I'm going to suspend my disbelief.
Right.
Which I think is a great way to sort of allow yourself to experience things and to keep an open mind, but at the same time, you know, not fall into the binary pitfalls of saying, I believe something, I don't believe something, and, you know, getting into rabbit holes of, you called it the woo and I say conspirituality,
right.
of where, you know, your mind is so open that your brain falls out. You know?
Yeah, no, and I think it's really refreshing that you're trying to, you know, you acknowledge the truth of a metaphysical / sort of spiritual awakening, but kind of inject reason in that as well, you know, because that's definitely been a turnoff for me where, you know, I'll go to, you know, I've been to a few ayahuasca retreats and, you know, I'll hear people talking about flat earth and like any other number of conspiracies that I know, or at least reasonably believe to be untrue. And it's hard to reconcile, like, okay, I really like this community. Like I think this is important work, but I'm also hearing a lot of like batshit crazy shit coming out of people's mouths.
And there's a lot of it in the community, community who are very big proponents of just total free think. And I'm for it too, you know, radical mental anarchy, sure.
Wait, I guess, describe, what do you mean by free think?
Well, as in, you know,
like
they don't like the idea of any thoughts being policed.
Okay.
So when I say like, you know, something like QAnon is a dangerous way of thinking, a lot of people will push back on that and be like, yeah, but fucking freedom, radical self-expression, whatever, you know? But I think that, you know, not shutting down ideas, not policing and saying like, fuck you, that's wrong. But instead, you know, having healthy conversations about these things when it comes to, you know, having a healthy level of skepticism within our community, you know, is community engagement. I think it does fall under the 10 principles. And I think it is a civic responsibility to, you know, be able to have and foster healthy skepticism. And again, 100%. That's not saying like, you know, fuck those ideas. It's not saying a firm no to anybody in their beliefs so much as it is, you know, saying like, you know, hey, let's talk this out. Let's reason this.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I think we have like the capacity to reason for a reason, and you know, we should
not everyone.
We should definitely deploy it to the extent possible. But you know, I guess shifting gears a little bit. I mean, you through your art, it is evident to me that you're maybe, you know, a bit of a psychonaut, and you know that you've had sort of visionary experiences. I guess, you know, could you maybe talk about where that began and, you know, how it has continued to kind of inform your work, both as an artist and sort of as a festival goer, et cetera?
Yeah. Well, I can start by saying that, you know, my art is a meditative process for me. It is my own psychedelics. And actually, I usually don't make my art on psychedelics, though a lot of it is inspired by psychedelic experiences. And much of my life is inspired by psychedelic experiences. My history with that medicine is the first drug I ever consumed was mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, when I was like 13 or 14, somewhere around there. Very eye-opening for me, and the subsequent mushroom trips, of which there were very many during that time in my life, to the point I often say I was addicted to psychedelics. I'm talking, you know, twice a week for a year kind of a thing.
Okay.
Actually was very healing. I you know, kind of like really discovered myself and you know, the world. And it was a really beautiful, transformative thing. And of course, there was the shadow work that came with that, which is at that time in my life, I developed a real ego around it.
Yeah, that was a concept that was new to me until recently, but that finally has sunk in. But please go on.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I just definitely took on that whole like, you know, fucking egoistic white teenager who's done mushrooms and now thinks he knows secrets to the universe kind of like thing, which, you know, is a little embarrassing, but you know, I eventually kind of got over myself. And, you know, I came to a place where I realized that what I was after was not a psychoactive experience so much as it is a perspective on life.
Right.
I actually read Be Here Now. That was pretty influential, reading about Ram Dass's journey to becoming Ram Dass. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, Richard Alpert
Yes.
/ Ram Dass.
Yeah, so him saying the whole thing about, you know, there was always the come down, right? That really resonated with me because I think a big part of the reason that I was doing so much of these psychedelics with LSD and mushrooms in particular was that I was sort of chasing this eternal state, but I wasn't doing the actual legwork to make that state eternal. And, you know, the years that followed, I put a lot of legwork into that. And that's something that's really kind of become a part of my identity is rather than being someone who takes drugs, be the drugs, you know?
Yes, it did. I love that.
And these days I'm mostly sober, you know?
That's
I do
awesome.
still appreciate the occasional trip.
Yeah, agreed. But yeah, I think like as a psychonaut myself, you know, there's definitely sort of levels to it. As I'm sure you can attest. And I think, you know, for me, like the beginning stages is realizing that, through these substances, I can connect with this thing that's sort of greater than myself, whether, you know, you want to call it infinite consciousness, God, source, whatever term works for you. But then, you know, I think for me, the early stage was, okay, well, I can only experience it when I'm in this state. So there's this sort of binary sort of dichotomy, right? Like there's like the 3D world and there's this other psychedelic space, and there's very much a division between the two, and you can only portal into the other thing when you're on a particular substance. And I think as time has gone on for me, I've realized that sort of the membrane between the two is actually very permeable, and I can actually draw upon, you know, have a connection to that space independent of the substances. But I think it takes like multiple trips and other sort of like work, whether it's like meditation or yoga, in order to even realize that that's possible. At least for me, that's been my experience.
I think in a lot of ways that's a very Western perspective. And I don't mean like the East is different like this, just saying that, you know, I think that those two worlds that you're identifying are just perspectives. And, you know, the perspective that a lot of us grow up here in the West, at least, is sort of that it is one of those worlds. And you can be raised to think differently as well. You know, what psychedelics do is they open us up to other possibilities and perspectives outside of necessarily the ones that we've been conditioned to. And that process can be profoundly healing. But, you know, the question is, what about how we are brought up, you know, outside of that, needs healing, you know? And I think that it's not the drugs are one sort of like entry point into understanding that. But I think that there's plenty of others. And I think that, you know, I would like to envision a reality where, you know, a person can get there. And I think that this is something that happens, but I'm saying that more commonly people just are there.
Right.
You know?
That's completely fair. And I guess what I'm saying is for me, like it never would have even occurred to me that like that state would have been accessible, like independent of some sort of like third party chemical assistance.
It's a good shock to the system.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is, you know, I think that there's a lot of talk within spiritual communities that sort of like poo-poos drugs a little bit because, you know, they're a cheat code, you know? But I think that especially, you know, here in America, but I think especially in the world that we have right now, you know, a lot of people need that shock to the system. You know, they need to be sort of shown that there is, and that sounds almost aggressive or forceful, but I'm saying that, you know, if someone wants to learn about those realities, it's not enough just to hear they exist and slowly work towards it. Sometimes a good shock to the system where you can be like, oh shit, there's other ways of thinking, is pretty profound and important.
Yeah. I mean, and I definitely hear what people are saying in terms of the cheat code, but I know for me, like I needed it. So like, it's funny. I was going through like my old like Google Docs and I found something that I'd written to myself before my first ever like ayahuasca retreat. And one of the things that I wrote was, I mean, one, it was like a long description about like how depressed and shitty I felt. And then the other was like, I would just like some sort of proof that I'm not alone on this planet. And it's not just this Darwinian bullshit. And I now look back at that and I laugh because like that is so far from like the reality that I live today. And, you know, but I don't think I could have gotten there without like that sort of cheat code, you know, coming from a place of like eating like shit all the time, sort of like chasing money, like doing like everything as prescribed by sort of the capitalist system. But also at the same time realizing like, oh, yo, this isn't really working for me. Yeah.
But you know, sometimes all it takes is a sentence.
Right.
You know, like, you know, one thing that was pretty eye-opening for me, is Alan Watts. I loved Alan Watts when I was a teenager. And one perspective on the world that really kind of stuck with me, comes from his description of, Indra's web. Are you familiar with this?
No.
My friends that are hearing this will like know I talk about it ad nauseum. But Indra's web is this parable, that basically goes something along the lines of this: is just imagine a multi-dimensional spider web strewn across which are dewdrops.
Okay.
In each dewdrop in the web is contained no image particular to the dewdrop, but instead it is just the reflection of all the other dewdrops in the web. And in each of those reflections of the dewdrop is contained no image particular to that dewdrop, just all of the reflections of that dewdrops in the web, so on and so on.
So
ad
it goes
infinitum.
on infinite.
And this is sort of like, you know, I think Buddhist understanding of like the ways, both the interconnectedness of all things, but also the ways in which we are nothing and everything. You know, who I am is a singular identity, and an ego is just sort of a part of this larger network that's sort of unfolding throughout time and space. And, you know, I'm just sort of like a point in this larger thing. And when I sort of reel back my perspective and see the world this way, which is something that was afforded to me not by psychedelics, but, you know, by philosophy, you know, I can see a reality which affords me greater empathy for everything, and also sort of like serenity in terms of just allowing things to be. You know, I mentioned before my work on radical self-acceptance. I think that, you know, from this perspective, it's really easy to see yourself as just the universe unfolding exactly as it was always meant to. And, you know, I think that's a really freeing thought. And I think that a lot of what can come from that will allow for these more transcendent psychedelic spiritual states. And again, that's something that isn't psychoactively induced so much as it is philosophically. And I think that there's all kinds of avenues to that, you know, should be, you know, explored as well.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think there are many roads that lead ultimately to the same place, whether it's through philosophy or meditation or psychoactives.
Yeah. All that said, 420 blaze it.
Yeah. Which makes sense, right? Like, because if your understanding of the nature of reality is that everything is sort of one, right? That's sort of non-duality, then it makes sense that, you know, multiple roads kind of just lead to the one. But yeah, man, I'm just loving the like deep philosophical conversations here. You know, I guess in terms of your art and stuff, you know, what is your art looking like these days? Like what's your process? What media are you using?
Yeah. So I'll tell you what, I'll get into that by continuing to answer this first question, which is sort of like this art journey, and sort of what my process is a little bit.
Sure.
So, you know, for those who haven't bothered to click on my link, what I do is augmented reality collage, and assemblages. And I sort of got into the world of collage because I initially sort of had this idea that I wasn't good enough to be an artist. I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to, is that they do their drawings and they see this gap between their current skill points and their taste. Right. And they see that gap as insurmountable and don't allow themselves to go through that journey. And I was one of those people. And I kind of got into collage as a medium because it sort of allowed me just to, you know, parse up my thoughts and just have fun. And I never thought of it as serious art. And then, of course, you know, 10 years of that, and then it became a serious art. And now it's something that, you know, I can sell my works for a considerable amount of money, which is awesome. But my artistic process with these collages is it's really just how I think. You know, what I do is I use image association, loose image association, to sort of like map out my subconscious thoughts and then communicate with them. So I will have a topic that I want to explore, and I'll start to like think about images and things and start to put them together, juxtapose it, and then I reel back and I'm like, okay, why did I do that? What is this saying? And then I think about it from a more logical perspective, and then I continue that conversation as a back and forth. And eventually that extrapolates into these larger pieces.
Got it. So it's not sort of you're starting from a place of like you have this image in your mind of what you want it to
sometimes
look like,
I do too.
Okay.
Sometimes I do too. It's rare that it becomes that image. So, you know, sometimes I have a specific emotion or thought or something I want to express and say, but both because of the nature of my medium of being limited by the images I can find and have the legal rights to, as well as, you know, as well as sort of like enjoying the process, it always ends up deviating to some degree. There are definitely a few pieces where I'm like, that was what I thought, nailed it. But most of them, it's sort of just an exploration and an unfolding. And I kind of enjoy it more that way when it's a journey. And you're asking about what I'm doing now with it and what I'm exploring. I've noticed with my art, I go through periods where there's different things I'm thinking about or expressing. I went through a big period where a big part of what was on my mind was gender and sexuality, made a lot of pieces around that. The piece that you purchased from me was about AI and sort of about big tech.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of technological themes throughout that piece, and
yeah,
we'll link to it. But you know, you can see like the little Apple logos that are made out of dollars and the surveillance camera.
I mean, if you're open to it, I'd love to talk about it, because I never get you bought that piece within a month of it being made.
Wow, okay.
Almost no one got to see that piece, which honestly, it was a lesson. I'm super glad that you're who owned it. It's really important that when you sell a work of great art, that you get it to a person that connects with it, that will appreciate it. And I'm really happy you're the person who ended up with it. But goddamn, I really wish I
I know I know
held that longer.
I remember when you when after you sold it, you had posted like, "Ooh, this hurts a little bit," which I can totally understand. I mean, it's so beautiful, and you obviously poured your heart into it.
It's just good to get the opportunity to show it.
Yeah.
You know, that piece, you know, it actually relates a lot to what we were talking about earlier about, you know, sort of the ways in which we've sort of, through algorithms and news media or whatever, sort of been pushed to a point of like partisanship. You know, the big thing on that was I was reading into AI and thinking about the ways in which, as we develop this technology, AI, algorithms, whatever, we're sort of perfecting aspects of, you know, capitalism in terms of how it orchestrates how we think and engage with each other. And when I say perfect, I mean in a very unemotional way. Basically, you know, the idea is the metric by which social media has its success is called total screen time. The longer that we're engaged with an app, the more money that they can generate from marketing.
Right. And it doesn't matter what that engagement is, whether it's happiness or fear,
so,
etc.
Well, in fact, and this was sort of what inspired the idea for that piece, was that in 2016, the feature of an article or of a post that caused for the most total screen time was outrage. If the post can stoke outrage, if it can make you angry, you would be on the app longer, because you'd be either typing out a large response or you'd be like reading the article or sharing it and then doing your own rage, whatever. And that for our society, I think, was really detrimental. And, you know, we're only honing in and perfecting these processes more and more that are being unempathically derived from pure capitalistic interest, you know, like how can we make the most money? And I think that there's a lot of danger to that. I kind of feel like we can't really do AI until we figure out capitalism. Because it's a bit of a genie out of the bottle situation. And, you know, if some of these, you know, powers that be, or, you know, some of these like modes of operation and communication continue to get more and more, you know, fractionalized, I think we're going to see we're going to see a lot of issues, kind of like we have been with things like QAnon.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hopeful that kind of with the emergence of blockchain and crypto assets, that somehow we'll figure out a way to, you know, to still leverage technologies like social media, but not have it be driven by such kind of pure capitalistic motives. Yeah. You know, basically, like I'm hoping we get to a place where outrage isn't the fuel for our kind of entire social media engagement, which today it feels like it is. You know, like so many of my friends, all they want to talk about is whatever like issue, what's the issue of the day that they can get pissed off about at the other side, you know, most of the time.
And, you know, I fall for it times too. I doom scroll, but then sometimes I just got to remember, like, it's not helpful.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't benefit anybody.
Yeah.
And, you know, both the echo chambers and sort of like, you know, butting heads that happen online. It's not real conversation most of the time. So
I fell for it really hard, during, summer of 2020 during the whole Black Lives Matter protest, right? It's like, defund the cops, fucking pigs. And, and then I looked back after the haze had kind of lifted, after we got Trump out, and I looked back at these posts and I was like, fuck, like I was very just being stoked by everything showing up in my feed. And, I think I made a conscious decision from that point on, like that, to try to kind of rise above, to varying degrees of success, of course.
But let's also not forget that is a place of privilege to be able to do that too. For a lot of the people that are really impacted by a lot of these issues,
of course,
this is not something that they can just
rise above.
Yeah. This is something that affects them very personally. And I'll say too, actually, on that topic, when I mentioned before about, having healthy communication, blah, 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 of which I've got much more to say, but I would rather save that for maybe another time. The ability to sort of have that, presence of mind in the face of a potential aggressor is also a place of privilege. And I'll say, more than anybody, I think it's the responsibility of white folks to have conversation within their communities and with their families when it comes to these things, because that dynamic is much more accepting and available to those conversations as opposed to somebody who is at the brunt end of somebody else's oppression.
Right. Also very true. There's a lot to like consider just in terms of like everyday social issues and
As far as art goes, though,
yes,
like reeling things back to that place, I'll finish up and say about that piece. The idea was just, what do we use this technology to save us, or do we use this technology to continue to exploit each other? Was kind of what the central theme of that one is. Lately, I've kind of been a little bit more focused on things like yogic philosophy, and social justice. 2020 was a tough year for everybody, and my art definitely reflected that in terms of how it was tough for me. I had actually a piece about May 2020, this summer. Huge piece. It just sold. Pretty stoked about that. It actually sold in two forms, as an NFT and as a physical piece.
Oh, awesome.
So
were those paired together or
nope,
separately?
Actually, totally separate. Okay. Although the person who bought the NFT actually bought it to put up in his cafe, which he claims is like a big Black Panther hangout. And it was partly as a gift to the founder of the Seattle chapter of the Black Panthers. And he says his intention is to blow it up huge and keep it in that cafe, which I'm pretty stoked about.
Awesome.
So that will exist in two physical forms, but they're different. But yeah, I mean, that piece is very much inspired by that experience as well. Like I said, my artwork is really just kind of how I figure out my thoughts and where I feel about it. Right now, where I'm going or what's next, I have no fucking idea, because I don't even know what's going to captivate me in the next moment. I've been doing some collabs lately. I just did a piece too about problems with the NFT community, because that's something that's been on my mind. But lately I've just been so overworked, I haven't even had the wherewithal to think about what my next stage in development as an artist is.
Got it. And I guess, as you kind of continue your journey, do you sort of have an end goal in mind, or sort of a kind of a sense of where you want to go, or do you just kind of let the journey take you where it takes you?
For the artistic process, or just as
or in terms of your career?
Okay, yeah. In terms of career, fuck, man, I don't know. I mean, I don't have a specific point I want to be at. I think there was a point in time where I really did, and I'm slowly just letting that go in favor of just learning to enjoy life in all of its multiple facets.
Right.
I'm very interdisciplinary. But not only am I an artist, I'm also sort of a filmmaker. I also do writing. I also lead wellness workshops, and so there's a lot of different things I care a lot about, and I'm hitting a point where I feel like if I focused on just one, I could do something big with it, but I don't want to do that. I kind of want to just keep doing things at my own pace, in my own way. And as far as my artistic journey, I'm just making pieces at my own pace in a way that doesn't feel exploitative of myself, and allows me to continue to appreciate it. And I'll say a big part of what allows me to do that is the fact that I have divorced my finances from my art. And what I mean by that is I make good money on my art. I'm hitting a point now where I'm selling my work pretty consistently in the 4 to 5 digit range, which is great. But the thing is, like, I also have a day job, and I choose to have a day job where I don't even necessarily have to, because I don't want thinking about finances to muddy up my artistic process.
Got it. And actually, you are the second person, or you're actually, I mean, many people have kind of said the same thing. A lot of the DJs who've come on have said the same thing. They're so glad that they've been able to what you just said, kind of divorce finances from their passion, so that the financial piece doesn't really corrupt what they're doing. Shout out to Theo. Shout out to Gia, who was just on. But yeah, so that's definitely a popular sort of refrain amongst the creators that I've had on, and it's very interesting to hear because, you know, typically you think about the gold standard of living your passion, right, is making money off of it or being able to like subsist off it, which clearly it sounds like you could anyway if you wanted to. But it also sounds like there is a freedom to being able to pursue that passion independently of a need to provide for yourself.
I mean, it's a trade-off.
Or from it.
It's a trade-off. You know, I'm very privileged in that my other line of work it pays me well. You know, sometimes it means I do less art than I'd like. But, you know, it also just affords me from having to worry about that. And I've made art from a place of hunger. And it really it really soils the process for me. Because then my thinking becomes it becomes very goal oriented as opposed to like journey oriented.
Right. Yeah. Like outcome, like you need that sale, etc.
Exactly. And I don't like thinking about that.
Yeah.
I just like making it's how I maintain a degree of sanity, you know, is just, you know, this process, it's health for me. And I think that stressing about finances is not.
Right. Well, you had mentioned at the onset that, you know, you thought that there was, or at least initially in your career, you thought that there was a gap between what you thought was good and what you thought you were sort of capable of as an artist. And yeah. I mean, I would say, having seen your work and being a collector of your work, I definitely don't think that gap exists anymore.
It's still huge.
Okay.
I believe I am so far off from where I would like to be as an artist, which is actually, at this point, rather than being a bummer, my new attitude is it's super exciting.
Right.
There's so much new territory for me to explore. Like right now I'm trying to teach myself animatronics so I can like incorporate that into my work. You know, I am trying to like dive deeper into what I can do in terms of 3D modeling, and how I can work that into my work. I've got a friend who does like a lot of CNC laser cutting, and I was hoping to collaborate with him on a piece that's like pretty large, 3-dimensional, unique in shape, and also has LEDs. So like, you know, there's so much room to sort of explore, and every piece I make is littered with mistakes only I know. And I can't wait to be at a point in my artistic career where I finish a piece and I'm like, fuck yeah, that's it, nailed it, done. And that piece will not be for sale.
Well, I mean, then hopefully you feel that gap is beginning to shrink slowly but surely as you kind of continue.
I'm definitely improving. I mean, it's been a wild process. My first piece in a gallery, because I didn't think of myself as an artist. I was just somebody who made art. I didn't think of myself as an artist until I had an acid trip at the Oregon Eclipse, actually, that really kind of connected with me. And we could talk about that. That was a whole experience. But I didn't think of myself as an artist till then. A month later, I got my first gallery feature. The stars aligned. As soon as I decided that was something I would do, it worked out. And I sold my first piece at that gallery show. I sold 3 pieces. And I've been selling ever since, and let's see, that was 5 years ago now. And in those 5 years, just the value of my work has gone up exponentially, you know, and I'm still consistently selling. And so, you know, it's a constant growth process. I look at my old pieces and like, I've got like a couple of old ones I still have, and I can't even sell them at this point because I look at that and I'm like, oof, that's unpolished. And you know, I think in a couple of years, I'll look back at what I'm making now and feel the same way. You know, which is, you know, ironic. I'll say too, you know, that's my perspective on it. I wouldn't necessarily lead with that when communicating with a collector. Because the thing is, most people, in fact, everybody, collectors, gallerists and all that, they don't see what I'm seeing with it. They're like, no, this is great. What are you talking about?
Right.
But I have aspirations for, I would like to take my art, and I'm just psyched to be on that journey.
Right. Well, I mean, you're always your own worst critic, right?
Yeah.
But so here's a question, and this is one that I've posed to some of the DJs and producers I've had on. But what I've seen, of course, in like the DJ world is that so much of kind of growing as an artist and growing a following as an artist in that space is so reliant on social media and Instagram these days, to where it's almost as though the majority of the job now, if you're trying to be a DJ, is sort of growing yourself as an influencer.
Oh, you're so right. Yeah.
Do you feel under that same pressure as an artist?
Oh, fuck yeah. And it sucks because, talking about yourself, promoting yourself, like timing these things. Some people really enjoy it, and for them, it's not, it's just, as natural as breathing.
Right.
It's just like, hey, I'm doing a thing. It does not come very naturally to me. And it's not just a teeth pulling process, but it's a process that incorporates a lot of ego and a lot of other sort of like frameworks of thinking that I don't really like to, muddy up that experience for me with. So I go through phases where I go really hard on social media and like, get in the hustle and do this and that and sell work. And then I go through phases where I like totally distance from that and create work. And I've hired unsuccessfully 3 social media managers in the last year.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm at a place now where I can outsource that job because of what the pieces are earning for me. But none of them have quite worked out. Still on the hunt for that. If you know somebody, please connect me. But like, ultimately, I don't want to do that. It's not very fun for me. I'm not very financially motivated as a person in general. I don't quite have the drive to just power through that. It just brings me no joy. And I don't care if that means I'm making less sales. I'm trying not to play that game as much as possible.
Yeah, man. I mean, I struggle with that too, right? Because I'm trying to do this show and grow a following. And then I've found that, oh man, like it's hard enough, like getting this together, getting an episode together, let alone, oh shit, now I have to like post about it on Instagram. And now I have to like post about what shows I'm going to and where I'm at, because it's not just about the content. It's about like a lifestyle thing now. And it's just like, it's a lot.
Well, it's also weird too, because like, the algorithms are designed to, support a certain kind of artist. I have a friend that in the last year and a half has gotten somewhere around 100,000 followers on their art account.
Wow.
And their art is great. Like when I say it's lowest common denominator, I don't mean it's bad. I just mean that it's something that is accessible and connects with
universal
a lot of people.
Appeal, right?
Yeah,
or broad
appeal. And they make something that they could churn out quickly, where they do 2 pieces a week or 2 posts a week, that has broad appeal. My work is not that. My work takes me months, and it's something that, it's hard to stretch out into multiple posts. It's a little bit more niche. And, those features make it so that the social media marketing game of it all, it's a real uphill battle. Like, I'm not given the best set of tools. And I feel like there's a whole demographic of artists like me that are sort of neglected by the way the algorithm is working at the moment, who don't necessarily get the biggest followings because, their type of art is not what the algorithm likes.
Right.
Of course, that's just playing the social media game. The other side of that is that same kind of art has been worked for me pretty well within the gallery world. You know what I mean? And navigating that scene is having stuff that is very intricate, that is very fine art, also has given me, benefits in that realm. So it all kind of evens out. But yeah, social media, not super fun for me.
Yeah, not the best. Though I will say that, as far as Instagram goes, once it identifies what you like, even in terms of your art taste, it's pretty good at serving you more of that.
Yeah. I enjoy seeing other people's stuff on there.
Yeah. To where I feel like it knows that, like, I mean, I mean, I know it's not sort of conscious, but the algorithm has a sense that like I am a psychonaut that likes trippy art, and it does a good job at like feeding me more of that. So presumably, I feel like your stuff is being served up to other.
People see it. It's not that my work isn't seen. It's more just that like the algorithm favors users that are on there frequently, and I don't put in that time.
Got it.
There's like certain points of departure in terms of how the algorithm operated that I can tell just by how the response to my piece has been. Another thing too is, once I get into a period where I'm doing a lot of posts, it's the later posts that get a lot more response because again, it prioritizes being seen by people that are active.
Right.
And when I do my first post after not being on there for a long time, I don't get as much views. So it definitely, people respond to my work. It gets its likes. It does well. Like, it's not like I'm doing poorly on social media. I'm doing great. It's just more that like the hustle of it is something I don't like to do. And I definitely feel like I'm missing out on opportunities because of that, but it is what it is.
Gotcha. Awesome, man. Well, with that, let me just say it has been like such a pleasure, speaking with you. Clearly very talented artist, clearly like exceptionally intelligent, so much to say. So it's been phenomenal, getting a glimpse behind your work and your process. And I guess before we sign off, obviously we'll put links and stuff in the descriptions and whatnot, but is there anything you want to sort of plug specifically before we sign off?
I'll say the big thing I just want to plug is my website. If anyone would like to see the work that I'm talking about, it is letsdothemindwarp.com.
Awesome.
Yeah, like let's do the time warp, but mind instead. And you can check out some of the pieces I have both for sale there and also as NFTs. That's definitely a good way to sort of experience and explore what I'm doing.
Yeah, and is there a particular platform like OpenSea or something? Obviously not OpenSea because that's Ethereum, but is there a platform people can go to find your work as an NFT?
Yeah, a lot of my work is on Calamint.io.
Okay.
It's a Tezos-based marketplace. You don't have to deal with gas fees. The artwork is stored entirely on chain, so if anything were to happen to the platform, you would still have your pieces. And also, they are much, much more eco-conscious. In fact, my first NFT series I did on there was actually carbon negative because it fundraised money for indigenous communities in the Amazon rainforest.
Awesome. So yeah, there it is, folks. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Thank you.